Hello, welcome to the Lately in PHP podcast. This is episode number 70. We are recording it a bit late in the month, but we are still in time. And as always, I have here with me Arthur Sosins. Hello, Arthur. How are you doing?
You know what I just noticed?
Uh,
That you have one monotone color wall behind you, so it would be cool to put some different effects behind you in some podcast, like explosions maybe.
what do you mean, like use some chroma key effect? Or
Yeah, like they do in movies. That would be awesome.
yeah. Well, I don't know. It's white. I'm not sure if it is the best color. Usually,
Really? It doesn't look white.
green or blue is are best because there is less of the same tone in the other places, like probably in clothes and so
True,
on.
true.
Yes. Anyway, if you use green or blue, probably it wouldn't work well because of the elephant that's hanging out there.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll say elephant is part of the prop.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we are here to talk about PHP, and this month we have very interesting topics. I'm just going to mention them very quickly, so whoever is watching understands what is this about right from the beginning. So the first topic that we are going to cover here is about a proposal that is called null coalescing, but for assigning values. There is another proposal that was approved for null coalescing, but just for right-hand expressions. Another discussion that is going on is about probably an inconsistency that Nikita Popov found in PHP code that if you have parameters in a constructor call, but the class that you are creating does not have a constructor, this code here is in the parameter is not evaluated. And the idea is to somehow make it more consistent. Another proposal that is being discussed, actually this is a more formal RFC for something that was proposed, like I think in January, is to have multiple exception types being catched using exceptions. So if you have different types of exceptions, you can have multiple catch statements, one for each type of exception that you want to catch. Another topic is about allowing empty property names in classes. This is not usual, but since nowadays you can decode JSON objects, and JSON objects can have properties with empty names. The idea is to support this in PHP, so those JSON objects work as well. The next topic that we're going to cover is about the spaceship operator, but this time applied to assignment statements. Then we talk about a more finalized proposal about having type properties. Type hinting for class variables. This was already also discussed before, but there is an updated proposal that addresses some concerns, and it was presented recently. Another topic that we're going to cover is about the final result, about the vote for VAR deprecation, which was discussed on the last month, and now the results come out. Finally, we are going to talk about a story that is a bit sad. Is about an issue with the wife of Nate Abel, which was one of the core developers of PHP and Lithium PHP frameworks. She had an accident with her daughter that was caused by post-birth depression, which is very particular problem. Nobody wants to have that problem. So now they are in court of trying to avoid that she goes to prison for something that certainly she didn't want to commit, but since it is a special condition that happens to women when after they have their kids, they are now looking for donations to help funding the costs of the lawyers and the experts so they can win their case in their in the court. Okay, so this is the list of topics that we are going to cover. And as usual, I didn't mention, but we are going to talk about the latest versions of PHP. Actually, in the last month, there are like 2 sets of releases for PHP 5.5, 5.6, and 7.0. Let me open the pages here, which is basically the same page, but all pointing to different sections.
Why there were double releases?
Because we were already recording a bit late.
Oh, okay.
But,
So
in the
previous
time,
month we recorded early and now we're recording later.
yes, I think that sums it up. So let me just share the screen here. As always, there is not really much to say about this. Just PHP 5.5 is in security bug fixes mode. So as you may see here, it's all security bugs fixes.
Yeah.
Many buffer overflows and some cases of vulnerabilities that are being addressed now. For PHP 5.6, well, there are also the same bug fixes, I mean security bug fixes, and then there are others. I don't see anything very specific that is worth calling the attention. But as always, your duty is, if you are using these PHP versions, is to take a look closer and see if any of these bugs affect your code. And for PHP 7.0, there is 7.04 and 7.05. There is quite a bunch of bug fixes. I also did not find anything also worth calling the attention, but again, it's up to you to take a look and look at these problems and see what it can be affecting your code or not.
Mostly, as you can see, for example, the security fixes apply to all 3 versions: 5.5, 5.6, 7.0.
Yeah.
And they have different code bases. It means each fix needs to be applied 3 times. That's kind of great work they're doing there.
Sometimes they are actually fixing the same code, just in different branches of PHP development. So it's not so hard. But I know, for instance, the Linux distributions, sometimes they have specific PHP versions, and they have to backport these patches to the older versions that they are supporting in the older releases. And this is probably a big burden for them, but it's their job. Okay, now moving on to the next topic. This time we are going to comment about null coalescing. And null coalescing. As you may uh, know, it is a feature that is already present in PHP, but this time the idea is to apply it to assignment statements. They have an example here. For instance, this is the regular null coalescing. You have some expression. You assign this value if it is null, it is not set. Otherwise, you assign this sort of default value. So the idea is to make this more compact and make it like this. So if this value is null, it will assign this default value. And there will be this new operator that represents the new coalescing assignment. I don't know if this would have very widely disseminated use, but I can see the use cases. Arthur,
Yeah.
what do you think? Do you think you would use this a lot? You mentioned something about JavaScript, right?
You will laugh about me, but I actually did not know about such operator in PHP.
I think it was recent. Was it for PHP 7? I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay, maybe, but that's kind of great because, yeah, for example, as JavaScript, we use OR operator for such purpose, and well, the downside is it validates to bool values, so you can't have false value as the first one, and stuff like that. But having such coalescent operator with assignment is actually great because, yeah, you usually have long data instructions to which to check, so it narrows the code that you write even more. So I would wish that JavaScript had something like that.
Yes, it is interesting. At the same time, if you are not familiar with these new operators, your core, once you read about them, they will probably look like it's something very cryptographic.
Yeah, so what are you doing here? What's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's remove those question marks and leave just assignment of value, right?
Right. Okay, this is something that is being proposed.
I think they were already voted for it.
Oh, exactly. I was just checking that, and since there was not many doubts about it,
we will have it in next PHP version.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I stopped the screen sharing. So moving on to the next topic. There is a discussion here that I found it surprising because it is a use case that I think almost nobody deals with, which is something that Nikita Popov found out, that if you have created an object and passed some parameters to the constructor, but the class does not have a constructor, the parameters will not be evaluated. Well, this is weird, but at the same time, I think when are you going to pass parameters to a constructor for a class that does not have a constructor?
Well, if you don't have the access to the class, it's somewhere inside, it's not your class, you're just using it, and you're providing some kind of function call that accepts some parameters, does something internal, changes some states and returns value that you want to pass to the class, and don't care if class accepts it or not, then if class don't have the constructor, it would not execute that function at all. So that can be kind of confusing, especially if you expect this
Yeah.
function to be executed. But for some reason, I never did anything like that in PHP. I usually do such things in JavaScript, but not in PHP. I don't know why.
Yeah, because, well, personally, I'm not a big fan of constructors. Nothing against them. It's just that usually I use a separate function to initialize the object because that function may fail for some reason. And if it fails, I can just simply return a Boolean, true or false, and then check some class variables. If I use the constructor, I believe it will not, it will just return the object, not necessarily a condition of success of something done in the constructor. But for those using constructors, passing parameters, they probably did not think about this case because they would only call the constructor function if it is supposed to get some parameters. But okay, I understand that may be a rare situation that may happen. He also mentions that HHVM does not implement the new operator in this way. They always evaluate arguments, so there is some inconsistency. Maybe this is something that should be specified in the language specification document that some core developers are working on. Okay, now moving on to another topic, which is basically something that we already covered in the past, but this time there is a more formalized RFC. This is an RFC for catching multiple exceptions, multiple types of exceptions. So if you have some exception code, like you can see here, and that code could catch different types of exceptions. It will execute different catch code statements depending on that section that you
Depending on an exception type.
exactly. Sorry, that's what I meant. So I think this makes sense. What I wonder is what is the default case? Would it be exception?
The last one? Or final? I don't know.
Let's say that the exception is not any of these types. Would it not catch the exception or just default to that exception? Let's say it's a subclass of exception.
I don't know exactly what would it do in that case. Probably you should always catch exception in the end.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this is something that is being proposed now. There is this proposal for PHP 7.1, but is not yet in voting. People, I believe, they are still discussing it. And okay, this is interesting. I think it makes sense. So moving on to another discussion, which is a bit surprising, I think, but at the same time, it makes sense once you understand the context. This is the case of allowing empty property names, like Like for instance, when you want to assign a variable of the class that has an empty name, you would do it like this, but currently PHP does not allow it because properties must have the names. So why was this brought up? Because nowadays, since many PHP applications decode JSON objects, and JSON objects can have empty property names, if you try to decode the one as those objects, I think it will throw some exception of a fatal error or something.
No. It would provide an empty with underscores from each side rather
Oh,
than
really?
being an empty string. Yeah,
Oh, okay, I'm reading it here, all right. And this doesn't make sense because
because it would not convert back to JSON the same way.
yeah. So this is interesting. So there is a pull request to implement this feature properly, but at the same time, I wonder if it would be possible to declare a variable in a class that is as an empty name. I guess that is not the purpose of this proposal.
You mean the class property is empty named?
Yeah. Well, how do you declare them in a class? This is just an assignment done at runtime. I mean, after the object is created.
So you mean some relational mapping from JSON would still have this issue?
No, it's not important. I mean, like, what if you want to declare a class with an empty variable? See what I mean?
Yes, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, because if you want to create a JSON object with an empty property, you just would do this. You create an object std class, which is generic.
Or an array probably too.
Yes, an associative array. Right. But if you want to declare in a real class, I don't think you can. Or at least it's not the scope of this proposal. Okay, this is just an interesting discussion. So moving on to the next proposal. This is about the spaceship operator. It seems this has been announced as a great feature of PHP 7, but it is not that useful. The spaceship operator, which is this sequence of characters, they call it because it looks like a spaceship. If you have it here, this expression A spaceship B, this will return like 1 if A is higher than B, -1 if A is less than B, and 0 if A equals to B. So the new proposal is to make allow to have this expression of A equal to A spaceship B, but expressed in a more compact way.
Oh.
This is interesting, but it is an even rare case that you probably use.
Yeah, I think Nikita Popov basically proposed this, as he says, for consistency, because all operators have such assignment operators too, but these ones don't. But yeah, I actually don't see a really use case here because you don't. I can't imagine a case where you would want to change a value when you are already comparing a. You probably want to preserve it for some reason and store the result in some other variable, not in the same a variable. But that's just technicality. Yeah. For consistency, maybe they would need it, but I don't see a use case really for this.
Yes, well, what I see is that the spaceship operator was used for callback functions to array sorting, because that's what they need. They need to compare two values in the array and return 1, -1, or 0, depending on whether well, which one is higher.
In JavaScript, they just do subtraction. So it returns negative value, 0, or positive value. And that's all.
Yes, and I think that would work as well. So I don't even know why this spaceship operator was that so important. It seems people want to have new things, just justifying to type less. Okay, so moving on to another topic, which is also something that is being more formalized, more, I would say, matured, because there is already a proposal to have type properties, which is basically type hinting for class variables. So PHP 7 introduced type hinting for classes, functions, and return values. Now the idea is to make it more complete for class properties. So basically, here is the proposal again, and I was trying to figure what were the improvements. Usually these are described at the bottom. So this is the history of changes. Well, I think it is to get more detail about what is being proposed, and then that is it, I think. Anyway, I think this is a good idea, as I mentioned before, which is to make it more consistent, PHP 7 more consistent. But I think this is only go to PHP 7.0 because this is a 7.1 because this is a new proposal. Okay. So moving on to another topic, which is to talk about a proposal that was presented last month, but this time there was a vote and the results come out. Basically, the vote stated that the proposal to deprecate var on PHP 7.1 and remove it in PHP 8.0 had more votes for it, 31 against 23, but since the proposal required 2/3 to be approved, it ended up being declined, at least for now, because I suspect this kind of proposals, they come and go. Probably there will be other proposals for the same thing, but considering some things that were reason for objections. Although I'm not sure if this happened now, because most people that were against, they basically said that deprecation will not add anything to the language, just probably annoy people that have legacy code that use var instead of public, because they would have to also maintain that code. It's not a big deal, but it's some additional work to replace var with public. Okay, are you saying something?
Yeah, well, and they are kind of right, since it's if it's not dragging anything behind, lots of code or something like that maintainers need to handle with. it will break a lot of code. but
Yeah.
but actually the result was mm, I'd say better than I thought. That quite a lot of users agreed to deprecate it. So I think a little more time will pass, and the majority will decide to deprecate it
Yeah.
eventually.
I think what they mean is that if you use var, your code looks old. And it doesn't mean that does not work, but I think people want to see PHP code with a different face when it is for newer PHP versions, as almost as if it was a new language, which sometimes it looks like that. And other than that, one thing that I wanted to comment is that if you are going to deprecate var, why not deprecate function? I mean, var and function came from PHP 3 from the beginning. They were supposed to be keywords to identify what is a variable and what is a function, but they are sort of redundant because a variable declaration needs to have the $sign, and the function declaration must have brackets. So
I'm not trying to imagine a case why function wouldn't be needed, but I can't from the top of my head. So maybe you're right.
well, what they mean is that if you are going to replace var with public, you might as well replace function with public.
You need function for closures for anonymous functions.
No, I mean in class declarations.
Oh, okay. Yeah, true.
So to be consistent, I think it would have to deprecate both. But anyway, since the proposal was declined mostly because it would not add anything useful to the language and will probably only annoy people that have to maintain older code. I guess this was declined for now. Okay. So now moving on to a topic that it's not really about code, it's really about the story of a PHP developer and his family. Actually, I posted this article to help Nate Avel, which was one of the core developers of Cake PHP and the Lichen PHP frameworks, to seek more funds to a campaign that he's making to help his family. So basically, what happened, and I do not know all the details, I only know what he published, is that there was an accident due to his wife suffering from post-birth depression, which is basically a condition that may happen to women after they give birth. And she had an accident with their daughter, and the United States Justice decided to prosecute her, and she may face prison for a long period, which will be very, very bad, because right now, when she needs to take care of their children, they are very small, she would go to prison. That would be very bad. These things happen, and not with every woman that gives birth, but sometimes it happens. And so now they are in court seeking to be absolved for this. But they need to pay lawyers and experts that testify in favor of them, so they can go she avoids prison. And this is a very touching case because this could happen to any woman that has their kids. And in the case of them, the Nate Abel is one of the core developers of Case PHP, and if you remember when Case PHP was released, everybody was talking about Ruby on Rails this, Ruby on Rails is great, and everybody should move to Ruby to use Ruby on Rails. And CakePHP came to somehow demonstrate that what Ruby on Rails does in Ruby can be done in PHP. And I'm not saying that PHP is the best framework or anything like that. I'm just saying that it helped to start a movement that from then on many PHP frameworks appeared. And I think PHP was important because of that. And Nate Abel was one of the people that pushed the PHP as one of the core developers. So in this difficult moment for his family, I believe that it would be nice if the PHP community sort of pay back for his contributions, making a small donation. You can just go here to the donation page. They have a goal of $40,000. They have already made 21,000. There's still quite a good bunch of money to go. And I believe that if each developer could somehow contribute with even a small amount of money, it would be helpful. Arthur, you also had kids. You had one kid recently. I hope your wife did not suffer from any depression.
No, yeah, there are no problems. It's all okay.
Yes, I also had one kid. Well, not recently, but fortunately, the mother also did not have any. Well, she felt a bit depressed because of it's a lot of new things, especially on the first kid. And you get stressed because you need to do many things, and sometimes you do not get the necessary help. Not necessarily that you get a serious consequences of getting somewhat depressed. And so, if you had your own kids and your wife did not have any problems, good for you. But sometimes this case happens, and certainly Nate's wife, Nicole, did not mean to cause any accident because it's a particular situation that nobody wants to go through.
Yeah, it could not only could happen in depression, it just can happen due to sleep deprivation and lots of factors. And I think that probably child services in US are much more aggressive than they are here or in other countries.
Well, there is one factor that got my attention, which is that over there they have private prisons. I mean, there are private companies that explore the prisons. And well, at least over here in Brazil, I'm not saying it is the case because I have no idea. I don't know the US reality. But over here in Brazil, there are some people that are against private prisons because they claim that in the places that they were implementing, all of a sudden people are going to jail for very little things.
Yeah, true.
Because the more prisoners those private prisons have, the higher profit the owners of the prisons get. So, well, I'm not saying that is the case. I have no idea. But I'm just stating that there is the argument from people that are against private prisons. And I think over here somewhere, Nate mentions that the private prisons are really tough for people. I don't know what happens inside. And it seems that there is only one private prison over there where she would go. And but although she was released on a bail paying $10,000, which is a very high bail, I think. Well, anyway, the idea here is just to encourage all PHP developers that can help send their donations, and hopefully the peace in their families will be restored, and their kids get the support that they deserve, especially now that they are very small. Okay, with this, we practically ended this podcast. I'd like to thank you, Arthur, once more for coming. And don't forget to contribute to the donation campaign of Nate Abel and his wife, Nicole. Let's all be have expressed solidarity with them. So on my behalf, that is all for now. Bye.
Bye.